All right, let's jump right in. Today, we are unpacking a really big and honestly, a super influential idea, hedonism. It's the philosophy that basically puts pleasure at the very center of life. But is it really that simple? Is just chasing pleasure all there is to it? Let's dig in.
So you can really trace the modern debate back to this one powerful idea from the philosopher Jeremy Bentham. He said, look, we're all ruled by two sovereign masters, pleasure and pain. He's not just saying they influence us. No, he's saying they dictate everything, what we actually do and even what we should do. This single quote is pretty much the launchpad for everything we're about to explore.
Okay, so here's our roadmap. First, we'll nail down what hedonism actually is. Then, we'll look at its two big claims, poke some holes in them with some tough questions, and finally, figure out why this ancient idea is still so important today.
All right, first things first. When people say hedonism, they're often mixing up two different things. It's not just one theory. It's actually two huge, distinct ideas packed into one word.
So on one hand, you've got psychological hedonism. This is a theory about motivation. It's the idea that the only reason you do anything is to get pleasure or avoid pain. That's it. Then you have ethical hedonism, and that's a theory about value. It says that pleasure is the one and only thing in the universe that's truly intrinsically good, and pain is the only thing that's intrinsically bad.
Let's dig into that first idea, psychological hedonism. Is it really true? Are we all just pleasure seekers at our core? You know, the basic claim sounds pretty convincing at first. It's this grand, simple explanation for everything we do. Think about it. Trace any action, any choice you've ever made, from what you ate for breakfast to your career path. And this theory says if you go deep enough, you'll always find the same root cause. You were chasing a good feeling or running from a bad one.
But does this really hold up in the real world? This neat and tidy theory starts to get a little messy when you really challenge that core motive.
Because when you start looking closely at why people do things, well, some motivations just don't seem to fit the mold. It really makes you wonder, are we missing something? Are we always really just chasing pleasure?
And here's where it gets tricky. I mean, think about a soldier jumping on a grenade, or a parent who gives up everything for their child. Are they doing that for their own pleasure? And philosophers point to even simpler things, like when you're starving, what do you want? You want food. The pleasure that comes from eating is a byproduct. It seems like we often desire things like knowledge or justice or helping other people for their own sake, not just for the buzz we get out of it.
Friedrich Nietzsche had this amazing, kind of snarky line about it. Yeah, he was mostly poking fun at English thinkers like Bentham, but his point was dead serious. Trying to boil down all of our complex human ambitions to a simple search for pleasure, it just doesn't capture the whole picture, does it?
Okay, so if the psychological claim that we're only ever driven by pleasure is on pretty shaky ground, what about the other side of the coin? Let's switch gears and look at the ethical claim, the idea that a life filled with pleasure is the best possible life.
This brings us to a really important concept, intrinsic value. Ethical hedonism says stuff like money, fame, or success, they're only good as tools to get us pleasure. Pleasure itself, though, that's the only thing that's good just for its own sake. It's not a tool for anything else. It is the end goal. And right away, this idea created a huge debate within hedonism itself. For Bentham, it was all about quantity. More pleasure is always better, and all pleasures are created equal. His critics slammed this, calling it a doctrine worthy only of swine. So his student, John Stuart Mill, fired back. He said, no, quality matters. There are higher pleasures like intellect and morality, and lower ones like just bodily sensations. And that's where his famous line comes from. It is better to be a human being dissatisfied than a pig satisfied.
But even with Mill's more sophisticated version, ethical hedonism runs into some really deep problems. Is pleasure, any pleasure, always a good thing? And more importantly, is it the only good thing? Let's put this to the test with two of the most famous thought experiments in all of philosophy.
So, let's start with a classic puzzle from the philosopher Robert Nozick. I want you to really imagine this. What if there was a machine that could give you a perfect life, filled with any and every pleasure you could possibly desire? Okay, so here's the deal. You'd be floating in a tank, completely unaware of the real world. This machine would be hooked up to your brain, feeding you perfect experiences. You'd feel like you were climbing Mount Everest, or falling in love, or writing a great novel. It would all feel 100% real and be maximally pleasurable. So here's the question. Would you plug in? For good? I mean, if a life of maximum pleasure is truly the best life, the answer should be a simple yes. But most people say no.
And Nozick argued this reveals something profound. We don't just want the feeling of pleasure. We value other things. We want our lives and our achievements to be real. We want to actually be a certain kind of person, not just have the simulated experience of it.
And here's another great challenge, this one from philosopher W.D. Ross. Imagine two different worlds. They both have the exact same total amount of pleasure in them, but in world A, good, virtuous people are happy and bad people suffer. In world B, it's the opposite. Evil, vicious people are happy and good people suffer. Now, according to pure hedonism, these two worlds are equally good, same amount of pleasure, right? But I think we'd all agree world A is obviously better, and that suggests we value something else, something like justice or fairness, not just the raw total of pleasure.
So after all these powerful objections, you might be thinking hedonism is, well, dead in the water. But it's not. It's still one of the most talked about ideas in philosophy. So why? Why does it have such lasting power?
Here's the thing. Hedonism's real power might be in its flaws. It sticks around because it forces us to ask the biggest questions there are. By starting with this simple, bold claim that only pleasure matters, it forces us to figure out what else we value. Every time you say, no, I wouldn't plug into the experience machine, you have to ask yourself why. What do you value more than just feeling good? Is it reality, truth, justice, authenticity? In that way, hedonism is the perfect philosophical tool for helping you clarify what actually matters most to you.
So in the end, the experience machine is sitting there, waiting for your answer. The two worlds are laid out before you. By pushing back against this simple, powerful idea that pleasure is everything, you actually start building your own philosophy of what a good life is. So I'll leave you with that question. If it's not just pleasure, what else is on your list?